G'day, Warbles on a lot to YouTube here, and today I'd like to discuss the idea of whether Gary at Inmendham and the Inmendhamites represent solo combat warriors or solo combat guerrilla insurgents. And I think it's a bit of an interesting question. Now, you've all probably heard of the idea of a solo combat warrior, David and Goliath. Two forces prepare themselves for a contest on the field of battle. They arrive, everybody's feeling a little bit iffy about it. Therefore, in order to spare a lot of ill will, they decide to get their two champions out and let them have a stoush. And if God smiles on the champion on the other side, well, maybe God's going to smile on all of the other side's champions, so therefore better to pack up and piss off and go home and have a quiet think about things. So David beats Goliath and everybody else doesn't have to fight. That's one kind of a solo combat warrior. A more recent solo combat warrior could be the Japanese kamikaze pilots, strapped into their rocket-powered bombs, trying to do so much damage to the United States fleet, or the Allied fleet as it was. A few Australian ships got hit by kamikazes. So much damage that the Allies would lose heart for the war and turn around and go and leave Japan alone. Right? That's a solo combat warrior. The world's current champion solo combat warrior is a bloke called Prince Leonard, and he lives at a little place called Hutt, Provence. Now, way back in the 1970s, Prince Leonard borrowed money to buy a wheat farm. The paperwork took some time to go through. He was purchasing a deceased estate after he got saddled with the debt, stuck with the title deed, having to pay the rates. That's when the government changed the rules so that there was a wheat quota imposed based on how much wheat the property had grown the previous year, and he couldn't grow enough wheat to pay his interest. But Prince Leonard, although he didn't finish high school, had read the Encyclopedia Britannica end to end, and he knew that he was entitled to secede from the Commonwealth and become an independent principality if the government of the day enacted a law which prevented him from earning his living in an otherwise lawful manner. So he did, he seceded. And he had a pretty good little tourism business going, and people would get in a bus and a whole load of them would go out to Hutt River Provence, and they'd have to purchase Hutt River Provence dollars, you know, 9 of his dollars for every 10 Australian ones at the front gate to buy themselves an entry visa. And then every meal they had at his restaurant and every night in the motel and everything they purchased in the souvenir tourist shop was all to be purchased in Hutt River Provence dollars. And they could buy postage stamps, which the Australian Post Office was honouring. And when they left, they either had to keep their Hutt River Provence dollars as souvenirs. It cost $1 for every dollar they kept. Cost them $1.10 for every dollar they kept. Or they could exchange the Hutt River Provence money back for Australian money, and they lost another 10% on that exchange. So Prince Leonard's income was estimated at $12 million. And he hadn't paid any income tax, and he hadn't filled out any tax returns. And when the Fraser government came to power after the CIA coup in Australia, they issued a federal warrant for not filing a tax return on him and his son. And when his son went to town to buy a Land Rover ute full of farm supplies, he was arrested by the West Australian police on a federal warrant. So Prince Leonard of Hutt River Provence sat down and looked at his books, and he sent telegrams to the United Nations Security Council informing them that he was declaring war on Australia for kidnapping his son, Crown Prince. And the Security Council sent him a telegram back saying good luck. The telegram he sent to Malcolm Fraser, the Prime Minister, was never answered. The next day, Prince Leonard spent in his printing shop where he printed his money and his passports and all the other stuff he uses, and he come up with boxes of pamphlets announcing that he was Prince Leonard, that Hutt River Provence was at war with Australia, and that if he didn't release his son, he was likely to come back the next day and chuck hand grenades at him. And he climbed into a 4-seat aeroplane, a Lake Buccaneer amphibian, and I know so much about it because I worked on the aeroplane later on, 1979, but in 76 he got in his Lake Buccaneer and he flew down to Perth, and he circled the city chucking out pamphlets through the window, right? That was the Hutt River Provence leaflet bombing raid on Perth. He then flew back to his little Hutt River Provence and he sat down, and on the third day of the war, Prince Leonard rested. And at the end of the third day, he sent more telegrams announcing that under the Geneva Conventions of War 1901, 3, 5, 7, 11 and any other number you can think of to which Australia was a signatory, and he was a signatory. He had declared war, his declaration had been ratified, he'd conducted offensive operations and nothing had happened. So after 3 days he declared that he'd won. Could the UN please repatriate his son? And his son was duly released with a $2 fine for not submitting a tax return. And in 1976, Prince Leonard became the world-ranking champion at solo combat warfare. Right? So it can be done, you know. 3 days to defeat 20 million people. So if Gary can defeat 350 million Yankees, he's got 60 days to do it and he'll be as good as Prince Leonard. And that would probably be a pretty good warming up match, because Gary set himself to cause 7 billion people to snuff out of existence. So, you know, like 350 million Yankees at the same ratio that Prince Leonard defeated probably 16 million Australians. That would be okay, wouldn't it, Gary? Fair digs. Of course, there's also another competition. You could have a go at the Solo Guerrilla-Insurgent, right? The Solo Combat Guerrilla-Insurgent. Now, that's where one individual offers the prospect of a guerrilla insurgency to a sovereign nation, and does it in such a convincing manner that legalistically the sovereign nation is convinced that if they don't back down they're going to have a Fruit Loop going dangerous on them, and the sovereign nation backs down. Right? Now, I'm not going to name this particular Solo Combat Guerrilla-Insurgent, but I'm going to tell you the story. And it's an interesting story, and it's quite comparative to Prince Leonard's, because the Solo Combat Guerrilla-Insurgent defeated the same nation, only there was 20 million of them, not 16 million. So this individual was in receipt of a thing called a community support program payment, which meant that he had been unemployed for 20 years or so, and there was no recognisable prospect of him finding a job in the normal society. And therefore a bloke who'd had 23 years in the army and was a psychiatric nurse was assigned to go and be the case manager for all of these Fruit Loops off in the hills who haven't had a job for years, and just check them out and make sure that they're not actually dangerous. And this particular one I'm thinking of, because he had 11% of the care of 2 children by order of the Family Court of Australia, not only did he get paid single person with children, he also got 11% of 2 family allowance supplements. And a single person with children was $385 a year, more than single person with no children. $385 a year was coincidentally 1 fortnight's community support program payment. So this particular individual discovered, when Johnny Howard brought in a thing called the Goods and Services Tax on the 1st of July 2001, this individual discovered that he had been reclassified as a single person with no children. Therefore, minus $385 from the yearly social security payment, however, still qualified for the family allowance supplement payment of 11% of 2 kids. And this was back and forth with the Centrelink officers in the nearest large town, and after 3 weeks of back and forth, the individual was told you have to have a telephone interview on a particular date. Time went by, and the day before the appointed telephone interview, old mate receives a letter which says, you must appear in the next neighbouring large town 70 miles down the road with, you know, you get yourself there, otherwise you're in trouble. And it was the 2 days before the fortnightly payment was due to hit the bank account. So old mate didn't actually possess enough money to buy the fuel to go to the interview, and he went home and he got really cranky, right? Really cranky. And he thought about Prince Leonard, and he thought about Hutt River Provence, and he thought about how in the United Kingdom they have a category of dangerously severe personality disorder, and that's people who have any 2 of the following 3 neurotic personality disorders: antisocial personality disorder, paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder. And if you've got any 2 of those in the UK, plus an IQ over 120 and a criminal record, they consider you've got dangerously severe personality disorder, and they have a 600-bed preventative detention facility at Broadmoor for such people. So old mate sat down and he thought, and he rang his community support program case manager, not in the next big town along, but the one further down, 160 miles away, and explained the situation to him, and explained how Prince Leonard had declared war on Australia and won, And old mate actually went so far as to say, I'm really worried what's going to happen if I flip out over this, you know, without any court case, with no justification. Suddenly I'm a single person with no children, and I've spent 4 years losing custody, and now I'm sitting here waiting for me phone call and me half holidays and the boo-hoo and the sob-sob, and I can't handle it, and what if, what if, what if? And the old mate says, well, what's likely to happen if you do flip out? Right? And the Solo Combat Guerrilla-Insurgent champion of the world said, well, I don't know, but I'd take it that if I don't get paid this $385 as a social rest payment, then that means you want social unrest for 2 weeks a year, so 14 days a year in order to inflict penalty points on your civilisation. I think perhaps what would happen if the infrastructure was attacked at 1,000 to 1, measured in dollars. So could I do $380,000 of damage undetected per year to your infrastructure? Hypothetical case. What would happen if a super soaker style of a water pistol was filled up with concentrated battery acid, pressurised and then discharged against the legs of a steel tower? And the 23-year army veteran psychiatric nurse went, gee. And old mate, the guerrilla-insurgent champion of the world, said, yeah, I think your tower's going to change its strength characteristics, tensile and torsional, and it'll lay down sideways in the next strong breeze. And the community support program manager said, well, what are you saying? And I said, I think you better contact these twerps and tell them just what a dangerous fulminating fruit loop you've got up there who's likely to go off if they don't fix this. And bear in mind that whatever I've told you, it's not going to be what I do because I've told you it, therefore I can't do it. 15 minutes later, the people from the office in the next nearest town, the 60 miles away, 70 miles away, they were on the phone saying, oh, look, we've rethought this. You don't have to come down here for an in-person interview. We'll ring you and we don't understand why you've been reclassified. We'll see what we can do. So the next day at the appointed time, the bureaucrats rang the threatening Solo Combat Guerrilla-Insurgent and they said, look, we've bucked this all the way to Canberra and the New Start Policy Programming Unit admits that there's something going on that's wrong because your kids are coming to you 6 weeks a year in 4 spurts, a week and a week and a week and then 3 weeks, and you have to have beds and clothes and shoes and everything set up for them, and we can't keep putting you on and off the payment like that, and it's just not functional. How about we get back to you later on in the afternoon after they talk to the Minister and the head bureaucrats and the people at the Treasury and sort the whole thing out. Is it okay, you won't do anything, will you? Right? And the Solo Combat Guerrilla-Insurgent champion of the world said, no, I won't do anything till you've got back to me. It's cool. Better say the right thing though. So, time went by, and when we were looking at 23 hours and 43 minutes after the 1300 phone call was made, so it cost the price of a local call, the bureaucrats ring back and they said, yes, New Start Policy Programming Unit in Canberra says you're right. So you're going to get paid at the higher rate, you're going to get back pay, and everybody else in Australia on Social Security who has between 10% and 50% care of a child will be paid at the higher rate also. Is that okay, sir? Right, and sir said, yes, that's fine. Thank you very much. I'll keep taking my social rest payment. You will get social rest out of me. Right? So, Gary, less than 1 day for 20 million people. I'll give you 3 days to think about it, lay out your challenge to this nation that you live surrounded by, and defeat them in 21 days. Right? You do that, and you're as good an insurgent as the bloke I'm thinking of. Of course, it's totally up to you. You don't have to compete in the Solo Combat Guerrilla-Insurgent category, in which no shots are fired and nobody gets hurt. If you've really got big balls, you can take on the surrounding sovereign nation that you're surrounded by under Prince Leonard's rules. You can actually declare war formally in a telegram to the United Nations and to your seat of surrounding government, your enemy government, right? And then you can go out and do something aggressive against the excited states of Norte Americano. Prince Leonard beat Australia, so you got 60 days. Go for it, mate. Go on, I want to see. And surely, like I said, considering that you have set yourself at variance against the entire remainder of the human race, all 7 billion of them, and you think they should pop out of existence because you're miserable, yeah, you better have a warm-up match first, mate. You try and beat AmeriKa. That'll be fine. I'd like to see it. Just think of it as a token of faith, you know, demonstration of serious intent, that you're not just a bag of piss and wind, but you're prepared to take some sort of risks for the causes you say you believe in. 3 days and counting.